Purpose sustains execution. When motivation fades, when complexity increases, when leadership feels heavy, purpose is what anchors disciplined action. In this segment, Jim Huling brings a practical and deeply grounded approach to aligning vision with execution. His perspective brings high-level strategy with daily behavior. As you watch, ask yourself, what is the result I'm truly trying to commit to? All right, are you ready? Here is Jim. We're so good on time right now. All right, we're going to transition, and the final topic that we have is purpose. And purpose is what sustains execution. It's what keeps strategy alive and motivations when motivations dip. So Jim is going to guide us into that in the deeper anchor. And my friend, it's over to you. Take us away.
Well, you remember the pressure I said I felt as we started, Connie? I think that's 10 times now. So, what brilliant, wise, heartfelt things everybody's already heard so much of. I hope I can match, at least in authenticity and love, the things that have already been said. And so I want to take a small liberty. I want to borrow a phrase from the construction industry just for a minute and use it metaphorically for a second. Stay with me. I think it'll all make sense in a moment. So if you know anything about construction, about building a structure that has to hold, you will have heard probably at some point in your life the phrase the through line. Now, it's an idea that exists in construction, but I promise you, in the next few minutes, I'm going to convince you that it is a central idea to the building of a great life. So, first of all, a through line is the structural path. Think of it, in this way, like my hand is going, that carries the weight of a building from top to bottom, right? So, if you're designing and building some kind of a structure, perhaps one that's going to hold precious human lives inside of it, you want that structure to be sound. And if the through line is intact, the structure will hold. And if it's not, then the structure weakens and possibly things that we don't want to happen can be our experience. Now, clearly, I'm using it as a metaphor, but stay with me because I hope this is going to be a thing that you can carry away from the message today. So I'll start by saying, when I reflected back to get ready for this presentation, I realized that all my work around purpose has shown me that this through line idea has always been center stage, whether I called it that or not. And in the things where I've been successful, I've been able to build something that stood. It's always because the through line is true. Now, indulge me just for a second. I want to illustrate this in a very personal way, and I don't mind telling you, I feel a little vulnerable. I for one of the first times in my life included a very personal story because I'd already gotten exposed to Nancy and Liz, and I knew it was going to be that kind of session today where vulnerability is the ticket. So here I go trying to match the incredible bravery and clarity that's been brought already. So in order to do that, you've noticed I have a little bit of gray hair, I'm sure. I want to take you back almost 50 years from this year. So almost 50 years ago, at 22 years old, not many people know this, I stood on the stage as the winner of the Metropolitan Opera regional auditions, 22 years of age. And I promise you, it was a pinnacle moment in my life. And I really thought, if you had asked me that day when I'd won that award, what that young version of me thought the future held, I would have had an answer that would have been confident and indisputable. I would have said to you, I'm going to travel the world. I'm going to stand in front of thousands of people and sing for them. And I'm going to use my talent in a powerful way. And, with the audacity we all had, I hope, at 22, I would have said it as though it wasn't in question. It was a foregone conclusion. It was a fact. Well, here we are in 2026. So 50 years later, I can tell you two things for sure. Everything I said that day was true, but it didn't turn out in the way I thought I had imagined. Because at 22, I thought that moment, standing on that stage, receiving that award, planning to move to New York and have a career as an opera singer, I thought that was the trajectory of my life. In other words, I thought I was seeing the through line that I was going to build a life on, right? The only problem was It wasn't. I was seeing the form of the through line. In other words, I wasn't wrong about recognizing that I had some gifts I had been given. And I wasn't wrong about my heartfelt desire to use them in some meaningful way. All of that was right. I just wasn't clear about how those gifts would become central in the creation of my life. And as I stand here today, or sit here, as Liz coached just a moment ago, to say, I think that's true for a lot of people. I think a lot of people are living a good life and doing a really good job and fulfilling many of the things they thought they would do, but they don't have a sense of what the through line of their life really is. So whatever we're building around that, if we're not certain of that, then we can't be certain the structure will hold across the whole journey of the life we imagine. So from that day to this, I'm really proud to tell you I've coached over 600 people in 7 different countries. I have today 19 clients that represent 7 different countries. And when they are wrestling with the questions that keep them awake at night, those questions, the ones at 2 a.m. that wake you up and say, hey, think about me. You can't do anything about it, but think about it all night long, those kinds of questions. They are wrestling with things that aren't easily answered. Some of them have been mentioned today. Nancy and Liz have covered some of these in a really good way. Who am I? I mean, who am I really? And what should I do next? And the biggest one I get to wrestle with, and certainly in terms of senior leaders, is I have everything. Why am I still not happy? Those are the big questions in life. And so I'm making you a big promise today for this very short message that in all of that coaching work, the answer almost always comes back to the through line. In other words, what is the pattern underneath all of the life that we've built so far and all of the life we still hope to create? So if you're on this broadcast today and you've hung on for speaker number 3, last in line, I hope you're one of those people who's asking those deeper questions. And if you are, I want to offer you one of the most important lessons that all of my 72 years of walking on the earth has taught me. And it's just this: you can't see the architecture of the through line looking forward. You can't. It's not clear. You can only see it by looking back. Now, a lot of you will have heard this Steve Jobs quote. I really like it. I don't know if you do. I find people have great passion on both sides of this quote, but I like it because Steve Jobs said famously, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backward. And in the story, I'm trying to tell you in my own heartfelt way today, the 22-year-old version of me would never have imagined the life that I created, would never have imagined that all the small gifts that I worked so hard to develop as a young singer would become the essential through line of the life I live today as an author and a teacher and a coach. At 22, I didn't know I was developing the very skills on which I would build a life all the way to 50 years and still counting, by the way, later, right? That insight was completely invisible when I looked forward, but it became visible when I looked back. So if you'll hang with me for just a few moments, I want to offer you a way in this limited time we have with such deep subjects, to give you 3 questions around which I think all the work I've done over all these years with hundreds of people has been built. Now, a warning, there are questions that can make or unmake a life. They're questions that once they're asked, they will not go away. But they're questions that can help you discover your through line and use it to design the next great chapter of your life. So only 3. I hope you're still with me. 3 great questions. You might want to write them down or at least think about them after we're done today. First, when in my life have I felt full of purpose and joy in my work? Okay, I don't know about you, but when I say that question, I have to take a breath. That's what tells me it's a powerful question. Even my own spirit wants to inhale for a minute because of the depth of that question. When have I felt full of purpose and joy in my work? Now, a quick note, I'm intentionally excluding the birth of your children and marrying the love of your life and running the marathon and doing all those things. I'm pushing those to the side for a minute. We're just thinking professionally for a second, right? When have I felt full of purpose and joy in my work? Now, I've asked that question of hundreds of people that I've coached, and I want to tell you this so that you feel okay. Many people can't answer the question. Many people say, Jim, I'm so sorry. I don't want to fail the test, but I can't remember a time. And all that says to me is that you're in the right place doing the right work on this day because that particular question has been patiently waiting for you. So you're not talking about when you were satisfied. We're talking about when you were joyous in your work. Now, if you can grab one of those memories, and by the way, you may have 30 memories. I've sort of portrayed the worst case scenario of I can't remember one, but some people have 10, 20, 15. So if you even have one, grab hold of that memory just for a second. Try to remember that day, that moment, what you were doing when you were sort of the right person doing the right thing in the right way with the right people. You were just in the flow of that moment. Now, if you don't have that moment or you feel uncertain, just take a breath. Everything's okay. This is not a test, right? You don't have to pass this one. But if you've got that one moment, then I want to remind you that life is an alternating rhythm. Nobody lives their life in a straight line. Nobody gets to live a life constantly in ascendancy. It's just not how it works, right? Everybody's life is filled with peaks and valleys, and we navigate through those peaks with joy and through the valleys with determination. But if you could gather all the peak moments of the last several years, all the times when you said, wow, I am doing exactly what I was born to do. I'm doing it in the way I wanted to do it. I'm doing it with the people that I wanted to do it. And I'm doing it for all the right reasons. If you could gather all those moments together like they were jewels in a bag and just spill them out on the table, you would begin not to see a collage. You would start to see a map, because those moments that are all in your past hold the key to everything you want and hope for to design in the future. I promise you this. So if you can remember even one moment, hold on to it, and let's use it for the rest of these few minutes that we have together to talk about purpose. Now, with that moment, I'm going to ask you to do something hard. Drop down a level. I love how Liz guided us a minute ago. That idea that I just gave you, that moment, that's right up here in your brain. So you've remembered it. Congratulations. Now I want you to drop 12 inches. So remember that moment, but remember it in your heart, because I want to ask you the second question. So the first question is, what was the moment, or what were the moments when you felt filled with purpose? Second, why did you feel filled with purpose? Right? Why did that moment that you've now remembered, why did it move you? Why did you show up on that day in that way to do what you did in the way that you did it that felt so special? You might have even called it magical. You might have said it was the greatest day I've ever had when everything was flowing. Why did it do that? What was it about that moment that made you feel that way? Now, for some of you, there was a message you were supposed to deliver and you nailed it on that day. I get it. I've had a couple of those myself. They're really awesome, right? Or maybe you had the answer to a real problem. Maybe you were helping someone or coaching someone or working with a group or just talking to a friend who was really struggling. And because your life story matched their life story in that particular way, you were able to bring an insight. Maybe it was that. Or maybe it was just a moment when you just showed up. God bless the people in my life who just show up. Even if they don't have an answer, they bring their presence, they bring their heart, they bring their life force into all the things that I'm needing help with. So if you can think of it that way, maybe it was one of those moments, right? But if you can drop down from what I did to why I did it, you have the second big answer that we're looking for today. And the answer of why, I promise you, is really more important than what. What is like opening a door? Why is like walking into the room on the other side of that door. It's a different kind of dimension. So don't be in a hurry. Spend some time on why did this feel like such a special day? Why was that the best report I've ever delivered? Why was that the most difficult problem I ever solved? What made it so special? And then we come to the third and the last question. And by the way, I'm moving at a pretty good clip because I'm hopeful you're going to chat with me in just a minute about these three questions and what they've shaken loose in your mind or maybe even in your heart. So the third question, remember the first one was, what did I do? What was the moment? Second is, why did it matter? And the third is, what impact did it create? Three dimensions of the same exact moment, if you're tracking along, that will help us get to the answers we need. Now, really fast, an homage here just for a second. I once had a very wise teacher who said many things to me that were uncomfortable in the moment. And here I am 30 years later, still thinking about things that he said. So I bless this person who was such a great teacher in my life. But he said to me, every achievement should be followed, at least in your own mind, by two words. So what? So you hit the goal. So what? You achieved the new level. So what? You solved the problem better than anybody before you. So what? I just love this question. You may be acting like me in the beginning, but it became a beautiful doorway because it's not only what did I achieve, it's what did it matter? What did it do? What impact did it leave behind? The question that should follow every grand achievement proclamation is, and here's the difference that it made. Now, I don't say so what in a snarky way. You know, there's a lot of cynicism in the world today. I don't mean that. I'm not trying to dismiss the achievement or the production of the goal or whatever you did. I'm actually trying to elevate it in your mind so that you got the promotion. So what? You hit the goal. So what? What are you going to do with it? Because that question forces us to not only take the insight, but to do something with the insight that will become part of the legacy that we leave behind. So I say this in a way that's a little bit controversial, but I hope you feel it the way I say it. Noble intention without impact is just sentiment. At the end of the day, no matter how grand our ideas or our desire or our aspirations are, if we don't translate them into some human action that made the world some kind of different place, it won't really matter when we're all finished, right? We have to push ourselves to go from that noble intention into enlightened action. So I like to say it this way: purpose expresses itself in evidence. Without evidence, all we have is a thought about our purpose. So if you're enjoying this message today, think about, in those peak moments, what changed because I was there. Right? Did another person grow? Did a team move forward? Did somebody find inspiration or hope or resilience to keep going because of what you did or what you said? What was the impact that will last after the moment has passed? Okay, so now those are my three questions. I just want to say them again to make sure they're clear in your mind. One, looking back, when have I felt truly filled with purpose and joy in my work? By the way, if the answer is never, don't feel bad. Start tomorrow to create moments that you will remember of being filled with purpose and joy. Second, why was I doing what I was doing when I had the great moment? Why was I doing it? Because in the answer to the why is the real secret. Remembering what helps a little bit, but as I said, it's the door to the room. Why is what's inside the room. That's where we're going to get the richest answers we have. And then finally, what impact did my life, my gift, my contribution on that day, what did it leave behind? Now, when you can answer those three questions honestly, I promise you this, you won't just be thinking about memories. It won't be a walk down memory lane like looking through a scrapbook. you'll begin through those moments to see the through line of that's been there all along in the story of your life. Now, I'll close this really quickly and a little bit self-indulgently, but I hope you'll enjoy knowing the ending. Several years ago, I found myself in this full circle moment. I was literally on the other side of the world. I was in Asia, and I was giving a speech to 10,000 people who had all gathered to hear this message that I had to deliver that day that was about the very thing we're talking about today, impact and purpose. And I remember standing on that stage and looking out across that ocean of faces, and something very unexpected happened. The 22-year-old version of me stepped forward. God, it makes me so emotional. And he said, I'm still here. I'm still here. And I'm still here with all the gifts and all the aspirations and all the dreams that you had. And today, yes, I'm on a different stage. And yes, I'm delivering a different message. But I want you to hear me when I say it was the same through line. You see, I was still using my gifts to bring this message. I hadn't lost the dream that I had at 22. I had simply grown into the dream I had at 22. Yes, it was not in the way I imagined. In fact, in a full hindsight, it was better, more spectacular, more wonderful than I would have ever imagined at 22. But it was different than the way I was designed. And that's what I want for every one of you. If you hear me today and take anything from this message, I want you to think not about being able to have perfect prediction of your through line. It's really not very valuable in the end. Not to have a flawless path. Who wants that? But to have the courage to discover where is your own through line and then follow it. One of the things I'm the most happy about in my life today, and I'll end with this, is to say, I can look back and say three things with absolute confidence. I saw the through line, I trusted it, and I was willing to build a life around it. And that has made all the difference at 72 from what I felt at 22.